The docking bay of Station Orionis 7 was massive. Dae-hyun stepped off the human transport ship and looked up at the towering ceiling, easily 300 feet high. The station orbited a neutron star, and through the transparent walls, he could see the strange purple glow of radiation being bent by gravity. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Nari walked beside him, carrying a data pad with all their research. She was shorter than Dae-hyun, barely reaching his shoulder, but she had the confidence of someone who knew more about alien biology than anyone else on Earth. Behind them, 5 other humans followed, all members of the diplomatic team. They wore simple blue uniforms with the Earth insignia on their shoulders. "Remember," Dae-hyun said quietly, "we're here to show them we belong in the Galactic Coalition. Stay calm. Stay professional." Nari nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the aliens gathering in the docking bay. There were dozens of different species, and every single one of them was huge. The first to approach was Targaval, the Krillian delegate. He stood 9 feet tall on 4 legs, his body covered in black chitinous armor that looked like it could stop bullets. His face had multiple eyes arranged in a half circle, and mandibles clicked together as he spoke. The translation device in Dae-hyun's ear turned the clicking into words. "So these are the humans," Targaval said. He leaned down, bringing his face close to Dae-hyun's. "I expected you to be taller, much taller." Dae-hyun kept his expression neutral. "We come in different sizes, just like other species." "Yes, but your tallest is barely 7 feet, correct? And most of you are even smaller." Targaval straightened up and made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "How did such tiny creatures survive long enough to reach the stars?" Before Dae-hyun could respond, another alien approached. This one was even more impressive. Velmora of the Centauri stood 12 feet tall, her body made of what looked like living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. She had 4 arms, each one longer than Dae-hyun was tall. "Welcome, small ones," Velmora said. Her voice was like wind chimes. "You must forgive our curiosity. In all the Coalition's history, we have never encountered a spacefaring species quite so delicate." Nari stepped forward. "We may be smaller, but we're not delicate. Humans have survived ice ages, diseases, wars, and natural disasters. Our size is an advantage, not a weakness." Velmora's crystalline face somehow managed to show amusement. "An advantage? Please, explain how being tiny is advantageous." "We need less food, less oxygen, less space," Nari said. "We can fit into places larger species cannot. We're more efficient." A new voice boomed across the docking bay. "Efficient at running away, perhaps." The speaker was Rix, the Durnathi security chief. He was 7 feet of dense muscle covered in dark green scales. His species had evolved from predators, and his mouth full of sharp teeth made that very clear. He walked over with heavy footsteps that echoed on the metal floor. "Look at them," Rick said to the other aliens. "Soft skin, small teeth, weak claws. They look like prey animals." "I've seen pets more dangerous than this." Several aliens made sounds that translated as laughter. Dae-hyun felt his jaw tighten, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry would only prove their point. "Shall we proceed to the council chamber?" Dae-hyun said. "We have a presentation prepared." The walk to the council chamber was humiliating. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped to stare. Some pointed, some laughed, a few took pictures. The humans were novelties, curiosities, jokes. The hallways were built for species much larger than humans, and Dae-hyun felt like a child walking through a world made for giants. The council chamber was a massive circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers. Each seat was designed for a specific species, and the human seats looked ridiculously small compared to the others. Dae-hyun and his team climbed up to their assigned spots and sat down. The council session began. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing Earth rotating slowly. Statistics scrolled past: population, technology level, resource capacity, military strength. The council leader, an ancient being called Mordak, whose species had been in space for thousands of years, spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. The species known as humans has petitioned for membership in the Galactic Coalition. We have reviewed their application. Now we will hear their case. Nari activated her presentation. Images of Earth appeared, showing cities, farmland, oceans. She began to speak, her voice clear despite her nervousness. Humans are endurance hunters. Our ancestors hunted by chasing prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We can run longer than almost any other animal on our planet. We can survive in environments ranging from frozen tundra to burning deserts. We have colonized every continent on Earth, adapted to every climate. Fascinating, Targval said in a tone that suggested he found it anything but fascinating. But what does this matter in space? You cannot run in a spaceship. You cannot chase prey through a vacuum. It matters because it shows our adaptability, Nari continued. Humans are generalists. We can eat almost anything organic. We can live in almost any environment with basic technology. We heal from injuries that would kill many species. You exaggerate, Velmora interrupted. Surely you don't expect us to believe that such fragile creatures are somehow superior survivors? I didn't say superior, Nari said. I said adaptable. There's a difference. Rick stood up, his massive frame dwarfing everyone around him. Let me ask a simple question. In combat one-on-one, could any human defeat a Durnathi warrior, or a Krillian, or any of the Coalition's soldier species? Dae-Hyun knew the answer they expected. In pure physical strength, probably not. Then how can you contribute to Coalition security? Rix demanded. What use are allies who cannot fight? We can fight, Dae-Hyun said quietly. Just not the way you fight. Then show us, Rick said with a grin that showed all his teeth. I challenge any human here to a combat demonstration. Non-lethal, of course. Prove you are more than prey. The council chamber erupted in excited chatter. This was entertainment they hadn't expected. Dae-Hyun looked at his team. Going into the ring with Rix would be suicide. The Durnathi was 3 times their weight and armored with natural scales. I decline, Dae-Hyun said. This hearing is for diplomatic purposes, not gladiatorial combat. Of course you decline, Rick said, sitting back down. Prey always runs when challenged. The session continued for another 2 hours. Every point the humans made was dismissed or ridiculed. Every advantage they claimed was questioned. By the time the session ended, it was clear that most of the council saw humans as a curiosity at best, a liability at worst. As the humans left the chamber, Dae-Hyun heard Targval speaking to another delegate. They'll never get approved. Too small, too weak, too fragile. What happens when there's a real crisis? Will these tiny creatures hide while we do the real work? Dae-Hyun said nothing. He led his team back to their assigned quarters on the station, a small section designed for visiting species. The rooms were too large for them, the furniture sized for beings twice their height. Nari sat down heavily on an oversized chair. That went worse than I expected. They've already made up their minds, said Bo Young, one of the other team members. They think we're weak. Let them think what they want, Dae-Hyun said. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. We'll prove ourselves when it matters. And when will that be? Nari asked. Dae-Hyun didn't have an answer. He just hoped that when the moment came, they would be ready. Somewhere in the back of his mind, his military training whispered a warning. Underestimating an opponent was the first step toward defeat. These aliens had no idea what humans were truly capable of. And maybe, he thought, that was the most dangerous mistake they could make. The second day of hearings started exactly like the first. Dae-hyun and his team entered the council chamber to find the same dismissive faces, the same barely hidden amusement. Today, they were supposed to present humanity's technological achievements, but Dae-hyun knew it wouldn't matter. The decision had already been made in the minds of most delegates. Nari was halfway through her presentation on human medical technology when the alarm sounded. It wasn't a gentle alert. The sound was a harsh, blaring noise that made everyone in the chamber freeze. Red lights began flashing along the walls. The holographic display in the center of the room flickered and changed, showing a new image. A moon, pockmarked with craters, with several domed structures on its surface. Mordak's voice cut through the noise. "What is the emergency?" A Centauri officer appeared on the screen, his crystalline face showing cracks of stress. "Theta 9 mining colony is under attack. Void-born raiders have breached the main dome. They're slaughtering everyone inside." The chamber exploded into panicked voices. The Void-born were legends of terror in this part of the galaxy. They were raiders who appeared without warning, took what they wanted, and left nothing but corpses behind. No one knew what species they had originally been. They wore full armor at all times and spoke a language that translation devices couldn't interpret. "How many raiders?" Rix demanded, standing up. "Approximately 200, the officer replied. "They have heavy weapons and have taken hostages. The colony's security force was overwhelmed in minutes." "Send the fleet," Velmora said. "The nearest coalition battle fleet is 3 days away," Mordak said grimly. "By the time they arrive..." He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what would happen. The Voidborn would kill everyone, strip the colony of valuable resources, and disappear back into deep space. "What about station security?" Targoval asked. Rix shook his head. "Station security is designed for peacekeeping, not military operations. We have 50 guards total, and they're trained to handle drunk miners and diplomatic incidents, not combat against 200 Voidborn warriors." "Then we must evacuate the station," one delegate said. "If the Voidborn can take Theta 9, they might attack us next." "We cannot abandon the colony residents," Mordak said. "There are over 600 beings on that moon. Civilians, families, children." The chamber fell into desperate debate. Every solution proposed was impossible. They didn't have enough security forces. The fleet was too far away. The station's defensive weapons couldn't reach the moon. The minutes ticked by while people died on Theta 9. Dae-hyun stood up. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber. "We'll go." The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the small human standing in his seat. "What did you say?" Rix asked. "The human ship Endurance is currently docked at this station," Dae-hyun said. "It's a light cruiser with a crew of 30. We have security personnel and combat training. We'll mount a rescue operation." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Targoval began to laugh. It was a harsh, clicking sound that others joined. 30 humans, Targoval said. "Against 200 Voidborn? That's not rescue. That's suicide." "We've faced worse odds," Dae-hyun said calmly. "You've faced nothing like the Voidborn," Rick said. "These aren't criminals or pirates. They're trained killers who have been raiding colonies for decades. One Voidborn warrior is worth 5 regular soldiers. You're talking about 30 of your tiny people against an army." "Then come with us," Nari said suddenly. She stood beside Dae-hyun. "If you think we can't do it alone, join us. Bring your security forces. Bring anyone willing to fight." Rick stared at her. "You're serious?" 600 lives, Dae-hyun said. "We're not going to sit here and let them die while we debate. Every minute we waste is another person killed." Mordak looked at Dae-hyun with something that might have been respect. "If you do this, you will likely die. All of you." "Maybe," Dae-hyun said. "But we're going anyway." The council chamber was quiet. Then Rick stood up, his heavy footsteps echoing as he walked down toward Dae-hyun. "I will come," Rick said. "Not because I think you can succeed, but because it would be dishonorable to let you die alone when you're trying to save Coalition citizens." "I will send 10 of my best guards," Velmora said. "It is not much, but it is what I can spare." Other delegates offered soldiers, supplies, equipment. Within 10 minutes, a rescue force was assembled. It was still pathetically small compared to the enemy, but it was something. Dae-hyun immediately contacted the Endurance. The face that appeared on his communicator was stern and weathered. Captain Jin-woo looked like he had been through 100 battles and expected 100 more. "I heard the news," Jin-woo said. "The crew is already preparing. We'll be ready to launch in 20 minutes. "We're bringing additional coalition forces," Dae-hyun said. Jin-woo's expression didn't change. "How many?" "About 40, including their security chief." "That's going to be tight, but we'll make it work. Sir, you understand what we're going up against?" "I do." "And you still want to do this?" Dae-hyun thought about the 600 people on that moon. He thought about the children. He thought about what it meant to be human, to see someone in danger and run toward them instead of away. "Yes," he said. 20 minutes later, the Endurance pulled away from the station. It was small compared to the massive coalition warships that normally patrolled this sector, but it was fast and maneuverable. Inside, the rescue team gathered in the main cargo bay. Captain Jin-woo stood before them. Beside him were other humans. Tae-min, the combat medic with steady hands and calm eyes. Hae-won, a sniper who could hit a target from 2 kilometers away. Mi-sun, the demolitions expert who could build a bomb from spare parts. And there were the coalition members. Rix and his Durnathi guards, all massive and heavily armed. The Centauri soldiers with their crystalline armor. A few Krillians, their chitinous bodies gleaming under the lights. "Listen up," Jin-woo said. "We're going into a hostile environment against superior numbers. The enemy has fortified positions and hostages. A direct assault will fail. We need a different approach." "What approach?" Rix asked. "We can't negotiate with Voidborn. They don't take prisoners or accept surrenders." "We don't negotiate," Dae-hyun said, stepping forward. "We hunt." The aliens looked confused. Nari pulled up a holographic display showing the colony layout. It was a network of domes connected by tunnels with living quarters, mining facilities, storage areas, and life support systems. "The Voidborn are used to fighting armies," Nari explained. "They expect frontal assaults, ship-to-ship combat, traditional warfare. But humans evolved differently. We evolved as persistence hunters. We tracked prey for days across open plains. We learned to be patient, to be quiet, to strike when the prey was weak." "You want to hunt them?" one of the Centauri soldiers asked. 200 armored warriors?" "Exactly," Dae-hyun said. "We use the environment. We use surprise. We divide them into small groups and eliminate them one by one. We don't fight them on their terms. We make them fight on ours." Rix crossed his arms. "And what makes you think this will work?" Dae-hyun met his eyes. "Because it's what we do. It's what we've always done. We're not the biggest or the strongest, but we're the best hunters this galaxy has ever seen. The Voidborn just don't know it yet." The ship shuddered slightly as it accelerated toward Theta 9. Through the windows, they could see the moon growing larger. Its surface scarred and lifeless, except for the domes that held atmosphere. Captain Jin-woo began assigning roles. The coalition forces would protect the hostages once they were freed. Their size and strength made them perfect for defense. The humans would handle the hunting. Tae-min checked his medical supplies. Hae-won assembled her rifle with practiced ease. Mi-sun grinned as she sorted through her collection of explosives and traps. The other human soldiers prepared their gear in silence, their faces calm and focused. Rix watched them with growing unease. These tiny creatures weren't acting like soldiers about to face impossible odds. They were acting like professionals about to do a difficult job. There was no fear in their eyes, no hesitation in their movements. For the first time since the humans had arrived at the station, Rix wondered if maybe, just maybe, they had all made a terrible mistake. They had judged these creatures by their size, by their soft appearance, by their lack of natural weapons. But as he watched Dae-hyun calmly reviewing tactical plans, as he saw the cold efficiency in how the humans prepared for battle, a disturbing thought entered his mind. What if size didn't matter? What if these small, soft creatures were exactly as dangerous as they claimed to be? The Endurance entered orbit around Theta 9, and the hunt was about to begin. The landing was rough. Captain Jin Woo brought the Endurance down on the far side of Theta 9, away from the main colony domes. They couldn't risk alerting the Voidborn before they were ready. The ship settled onto the dusty surface with a metallic groan. Through the windows, they could see the colony in the distance. Smoke rose from several of the domes. Lights flickered on and off. The distress signals still broadcasted, but there had been no communications from inside for over an hour. The rescue team gathered at the airlock. The humans wore light combat armor, nothing like the heavy plating the Coalition soldiers carried. Rix looked at Dae-hyun's gear and frowned. "That armor won't stop a plasma bolt," Rix said. "It's not meant to," Dae-hyun replied, checking his weapon. "Heavy armor slows you down. We rely on not getting hit." "That's insane." Dae-hyun smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Only if you get hit." They exited the ship in teams. The moon's gravity was lighter than Earth's, and the humans moved with ease, bouncing slightly with each step. The Coalition soldiers were slower. Their heavy frames not built for this environment. Nari led them to a maintenance entrance she had found in the colony schematics. It was a small airlock designed for repair crews, far from the main gates where the Voidborn had entered. The door was locked, but Mi-soon placed a small charge on the mechanism. There was a quiet pop, and the door slid open. They entered the colony's underground tunnel system. The lights were dim, running on emergency power. The tunnels were meant for utility access, barely tall enough for the Dernathi to walk through without ducking. For the humans, they were perfect. Dae-hyun activated his comm system. "All teams radio silence from here. Hand signals only. Hae-won, find your position. Mi-sun, start planting surprises. Everyone else, we move in pairs. Stay quiet, stay hidden." The teams split up. Hae-won disappeared into the ventilation system, climbing toward the upper levels where she would have a clear view of the colony. Mi-sun moved through the tunnels, placing small explosive charges and motion sensors at key points. Dae-hyun and Na-ri moved together, with Rix following behind them. The Dornathi had insisted on seeing the humans in action. Now he watched as they moved through the dim tunnels like ghosts, their footsteps making no sound on the metal floor. They reached an access ladder leading up to the residential dome. Through a small window in the floor above, they could see Voidborn warriors patrolling. The raiders wore black armor that covered every inch of their bodies. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, and carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Dae-hyun held up his hand, signaling a stop. He pulled out a small device and pointed it at the window, measuring the patrol pattern. The Voidborn passed by every 3 minutes, regular, predictable. 3 minutes later, when the patrol passed again, Dae-hyun moved. He climbed the ladder in complete silence, opened the access hatch just enough to slip through, and was gone. Nari followed. Rix tried to follow, but his bulk made the ladder creak. He froze, waiting for alarms. Nothing happened. He climbed up and found himself in a storage room filled with equipment. Dae-hyun and Nari were already across the room, pressed against the wall near the door. They moved so quietly that even Rix's enhanced hearing barely detected them. Through the door window, Rix could see the hallway beyond. 2 Voidborn stood guard outside what looked like a sealed room. Hostages, probably. The raiders were using them as shields, knowing the coalition wouldn't risk civilian lives in an assault. Dae-hyun made a series of hand signals. Rix didn't understand them. But Na-ri nodded. She pulled out a small metal sphere and rolled it down the hallway. It made a soft clicking sound as it bounced. The Voidborn guards turned toward the noise. Their body language showed confusion. They raised their weapons, advancing on the sphere cautiously. The sphere exploded, not with fire and force, but with light and sound. The flash was blinding even through the door window. The noise was a high-pitched shriek that seemed to go on forever. The Voidborn staggered, disoriented. In that moment, Dae-hyun moved. Rix had fought in many battles. He had seen warriors from dozens of species in combat. But he had never seen anything like what Dae-hyun did. The human was across the hallway in 2 seconds. He didn't shoot. Instead, he went low, sliding under the first Voidborn's weapon, and drove a knife into a joint in the armor at the hip. The Voidborn howled and fell. Before the second raider could react, Dae-hyun was behind him, knife finding the weak point at the back of the neck where armor plates met. Both Voidborn were down in less than 5 seconds. No shots fired, no alarms raised. Na-ri was already at the sealed door, working on the lock. It opened with a hiss, revealing 30 civilians huddled inside. Humans would have made noise, asked questions. These aliens just stared in shock. "Stay quiet," Na-ri whispered. "We're here to help. More guards are coming to protect you. Stay in this room until they arrive." She activated her comm. Rix heard a brief burst of static, a coded message. Minutes later, 4 of the Centauri soldiers arrived, their crystalline bodies making them perfect for defensive positions. They would guard the hostages while the humans continued the hunt. The pattern repeated throughout the colony. Small teams of humans appeared and disappeared like ghosts. They moved through ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels behind walls. They used the environment in ways the Voidborn had never considered. Haewon found her position in the colony's central tower. From there, she had sight lines across 3 different domes. Her rifle was silent, using compressed air instead of gunpowder. Voidborn sentries started disappearing from their posts, one by one. The other raiders found bodies but no signs of who killed them. Misun's traps were works of art. She rigged doors to seal shut when opened. She placed charges in the floor that would collapse tunnels. She created a maze of hazards that the Voidborn stumbled into, dying without ever seeing their enemy. Taemin set up a hidden medical station in an abandoned cafeteria. 2 human soldiers had been grazed by plasma fire, nothing serious. He treated them efficiently, and they were back in action within minutes. The coalition soldiers watched in amazement. Those wounds should have taken days to heal, but the humans just bandaged them and kept fighting. In the colony's main control room, the Voidborn leader, Scraith, watched his warriors die on security monitors. He was confused and growing angry. His forces were being eliminated. But he couldn't see the enemy. The cameras showed empty hallways, shadows that might have been movement, and then dead raiders. "Find them!" Scraith roared. "They're just humans, tiny, weak humans. Find them and kill them." But his warriors couldn't find what they couldn't see. The humans hunted like their ancestors had hunted on Earth's plains. They were patient. They waited for the perfect moment. They struck from unexpected angles and disappeared before retaliation was possible. Rix followed Dae-hyun through the colony, watching the human work. Dae-hyun never rushed. He studied each area before entering. He listened at doors before opening them. He moved when the enemy was distracted and froze when they were alert. They found a group of 5 Voidborn in a dining hall, eating food they had stolen from the colony supplies. Dae-hyun could have used a grenade, but that would make noise. Instead, he waited. He waited for 30 minutes, barely moving, barely breathing. Rix's legs ached from standing still. He wanted to ask what they were waiting for, but Dae-hyun had signaled for silence. Then one of the Voidborn left the room, heading for what was probably a bathroom. Dae-hyun followed like a shadow. There was a brief, muffled sound. The Voidborn didn't return. 10 minutes later, another one left. Same result. By the time the remaining 3 Voidborn realized something was wrong, Dae-hyun had already eliminated 2 more. The last raider panicked, called for backup on his comm system. That's when Dae-hyun revealed himself, stepping into the doorway. The Voidborn raised his weapon, but Dae-hyun was faster. A single shot to the weak point in the armor, and it was over. "Why did you let him call for help?" Rix asked. Dae-hyun smiled. "Because now we know where they'll send reinforcements. Mi-sun has that hallway rigged with traps. We're not just killing them, we're hurting them." Rix finally understood. This wasn't just a rescue mission. The humans were systematically destroying the Voidborn force, using tactics the raiders had never encountered. They weren't fighting with honor or glory. They were fighting to win, using every advantage they could create. Throughout the colony, the Voidborn force was being dismantled. Their numbers dropped from 200 to 150, then to 100. They tried to adapt, to group together for safety, but that only made them easier targets for Mi-sun's explosives. They tried to find the humans, but searching the colony's thousands of hiding spots was impossible. The humans knew the layout better than the raiders did. Nari had studied the schematics for hours, memorizing every vent, every access tunnel, every escape route. The Voidborn were used to fighting armies. They were used to enemies who charged forward with guns blazing. They had no defense against an enemy that refused to be seen, that struck without warning and vanished without a trace. In the central control room, Scraith made his decision. He ordered all remaining forces to gather in the main dome, where they would use the largest group of hostages as shields. Over 300 civilians were held there. Any attack would kill them all. It was the smart move, the tactical move. Scraith knew it would force the humans to either retreat or negotiate. He broadcast a message to the entire colony. "Humans!" His voice boomed through the speakers. "I know you're listening. You've killed many of my warriors, but we still hold the main dome. 300 lives are in my hands. Surrender now, or they all die." Dae-hyun received the message in a quiet corner of the colony. Nari was beside him, along with Rix and several other team members. "What do we do?" one of the human soldiers asked. Dae-hyun's expression was cold, calculating. He looked at the map of the colony on his datapad, studying the main dome where the hostages were held. "We do what we've been doing," he said quietly. "We hunt." The main dome was the largest structure in the colony, a massive space designed for community gatherings and markets. Now it had become a prison. 300 hostages sat on the floor, guarded by 80 Voidborn warriors. The raiders had barricaded all entrances and positioned sentries at every possible approach. Scraith stood in the center of it all, his black armor making him look like a monument to death. He was bigger than the other Voidborn, nearly 9 feet tall, with armor reinforced with extra plating. In his hands, he held a weapon that glowed with barely contained energy. "They won't attack," Scraith told his second-in-command. "They're too soft, too concerned with civilian lives. We'll wait here until their fleet arrives, then negotiate our escape." But Scraith didn't understand humans. He didn't know that Dae-hyun wasn't trying to avoid civilian casualties by retreating. He was trying to avoid them by being perfect. In the tunnels beneath the main dome, the human team gathered. Dae-hyun had called everyone together, all 30 human soldiers, plus the coalition forces who had been protecting freed hostages. They stood in the dim light, listening to their commander outline the plan. "The Voidborn think they're safe," Dae-hyun said, pointing to a holographic map of the dome. "They've got all the exits covered, but they made 3 mistakes. First, they assumed we'd come through doors. Second, they grouped all their forces in one place. Third, they underestimated us." He highlighted sections of the map. "Mi-sun, You've been planting charges throughout the colony. Can you collapse the escape tunnels they'll try to use? Mi-sun grinned. Already done. When I hit the trigger, every route out of that dome except one will be blocked. Good. Hey, one, you've got the high position? The sniper nodded. There's a catwalk in the dome's ceiling. Maintenance access. I can reach it through the ventilation system. Once I'm in position, I'll have clear shots on their sentries. Tae-min, you'll stay with the coalition forces. When the hostages are free, get them to safety fast. The medic nodded, his face calm as always. Dae-hyun looked at each of his soldiers in turn. This is going to be fast and violent. We're going in through the floor, the ceiling, and the walls at the same time. Overwhelming force, multiple directions. They won't know what hit them. But remember, 300 civilians are in that dome. Every shot has to count. No mistakes. Rix stepped forward. What about us? The coalition forces? You protect the civilians once they're clear, Dae-hyun said. Your strength and armor make you perfect for that. Get them to the Endurance and prepare for evacuation. You're doing the hard part with just 30 soldiers? We're doing the hard part because we're the only ones who can, Dae-hyun said simply. No offense, but you're too big for what we need to do. This requires precision, not power. The teams moved into position. It took 2 hours to get everyone where they needed to be. 2 hours of crawling through tight spaces, of silent movement, of perfect patience. The Voidborn in the dome grew restless, but Scraith kept them in position. Hae-won reached the catwalk first. It was a narrow platform suspended from the dome's ceiling, designed for workers to change lights and repair systems. She set up her rifle, checking sight lines to every sentry position below. Through her scope, she could see the hostages, huddled together in fear. She could see the Voidborn warriors, confident in their defensive position. She touched her comm once. A single click. The signal. Below the dome, Mi-sun armed her charges. Above the dome, 3 teams of humans waited at ventilation grates. Around the dome, more humans positioned themselves at weak points in the walls that Nari had identified. Dae-hyun was directly beneath the dome's center, with a team of 6 soldiers. They had cut through the floor, creating an opening just large enough to slip through. On his signal, they would come up right in the middle of the hostages. He looked at his watch. 30 seconds. He thought about all the times aliens had called humans weak. All the jokes about their size. All the assumptions that soft skin meant soft will. 20 seconds. He thought about the 600 people they had saved so far. About the children who would see their parents again. 10 seconds. He thought about Earth. About the predators humans had faced and conquered. The lions, the bears, the wolves. All bigger, all stronger, all evolved to kill, and yet humans had survived them all, had hunted them all, had become the apex predator of an entire planet. 5 seconds. Dae-hyun's face went cold. His eyes became hard. The fear, the doubt, everything human about his expression vanished. What remained was something the Voidborn were about to learn was far more dangerous than any wild animal. 0. The dome exploded into chaos. Hae-won fired first. Her silent rifle put rounds through 3 sentries before anyone knew the attack had started. The Voidborn fell without making a sound. Then the humans came through the floor, the walls, the ceiling. They appeared everywhere at once. Smoke grenades detonated, filling the dome with thick white clouds. Flash bangs followed, blinding and deafening the Voidborn. Dae-hyun came up in the middle of the hostages. "Down!" he shouted. "Everyone stay down!" The civilians dropped flat. The humans moved through them like water, their small size allowing them to navigate the crowd that the Voidborn couldn't. They fired with impossible precision, each shot hitting exactly where it needed to. A Voidborn warrior swung his weapon toward a cluster of hostages. Jin-woo was there first, tackling the civilians out of the way and putting 2 rounds into the warrior's weak points before he could fire. Another raider tried to use a child as a shield. Haywan's bullet took him through the eye slit in his helmet from 60 feet away. The child didn't even know how close to death she had been. The Voidborn tried to fight back, but they were fighting blind. The smoke made it impossible to see, and the humans were everywhere and nowhere. Every time a raider thought he had a target, the human was already gone, appearing somewhere else to strike again. Skraith roared in fury. He fired his weapon wildly, the energy bolts scorching the walls. "Stand and fight, cowards!" But the humans didn't stand and fight. They moved, adapted, flowed around obstacles like they were liquid. They communicated with hand signals and brief glances, a coordination born from thousands of years of pack hunting. Mi-Sun's charges detonated outside the dome, collapsing the escape tunnels exactly as planned. The Voidborn were trapped with no way out except the one route the humans had left open, which led straight to where Tai Min and the Coalition forces waited. Some Voidborn tried to run that way. They found themselves facing Rix and his Durnathi warriors, who were finally in their element. In a straight defensive fight, protecting civilians behind them, the Durnathi were unstoppable. The fleeing Voidborn didn't stand a chance. Back in the dome, the smoke began to clear. 30 Voidborn remained, clustered around Skraith. The rest were dead or had fled. The hostages had been evacuated by human soldiers who moved them through the chaos with practiced efficiency. Skraith looked around at the carnage. His force of 200 had been reduced to 30 in less than 4 hours. He had been outmaneuvered, outfought, and outsmarted by a species he had dismissed as weak. "Show yourself," Skraith demanded. "Face me like a warrior." Dae-hyun stepped out of the smoke. He was alone, his weapon lowered. At 5 feet 8 inches, he barely reached Skraith's chest. His armor was lighter, his frame was smaller, his weapons were less powerful. Skraith laughed. "This is what I've been fighting, this tiny creature." "Just me," Dae-hyun said. Skraith's remaining warriors raised their weapons, but Skraith held up a hand. "No, this one is mine. I'll crush him and show these humans what real strength looks like." He activated his energy claws, blades of pure plasma that extended from his gauntlets. Each one was longer than Dae-hyun's arm. He charged forward with a roar that shook the dome. What happened next would be analyzed later by Coalition tactical experts. They would watch the recordings from a dozen different angles, study every movement, try to understand how it was possible. Dae-hyun didn't run. He didn't try to shoot. Instead, he moved forward to meet the charge. Skraith swung his claws in a wide arc that should have cut the human in half. But Dae-hyun wasn't there anymore. He had dropped low, sliding under the blow, and came up inside Skraith's reach where the long claws were useless. Dae-hyun's knife found the joint at Skraith's elbow. The Voidborn's arm went limp. Before Skraith could react, Dae-hyun was behind him, had climbed onto his back, and was driving the knife into the weak points in the armor's neck seal. Skraith thrashed, trying to throw the human off. He was stronger, bigger, more powerful. But Dae-hyun held on with a grip that seemed impossible for someone his size. He struck again and again, each blow precise and brutal. The other Voidborn tried to help their leader, but they found themselves facing the rest of the human team. In the close quarters fighting that followed, size became a disadvantage. The Voidborn were too big, too slow, too used to fighting at range. The humans were in their element. They had evolved for this kind of combat, for the close and brutal and personal. They used knives, elbows, knees, anything that worked. They targeted joints and weak points with surgical precision. Skraith finally threw Dae-hyun off. The human hit the ground and rolled, coming up ready to fight again. But Skraith was done. His armor was breached in a dozen places. Blood leaked from the seals. He fell to his knees. "What are you?" Skraith whispered. Dae-hyun's expression was cold. "We're humans. We're the species that hunted mammoths to extinction with stone spears. We're the species that conquered an entire planet full of things bigger and stronger than us. We're what happens when prey becomes predator." Skraith fell forward, dead. The remaining Voidborn dropped their weapons and surrendered. The battle was over. The Endurance returned to Station Orionis 7, 18 hours after the battle. Every rescued civilian had been evacuated safely. Every human soldier had survived, though a few carried injuries. The Voidborn prisoners were secured in the cargo hold, awaiting Coalition justice. As the ship docked, word had already spread throughout the station. The impossible had happened. 30 humans and a handful of Coalition soldiers had defeated 200 Voidborn raiders and saved 600 lives. The docking bay was crowded when Dae-hyun and his team emerged. Hundreds of aliens had gathered, representing dozens of species. They watched in silence as the humans walked down the ramp. Gone was the mockery, the laughter, the dismissive jokes. Now there was something else in their eyes: fear, respect, wonder. Mordak himself was waiting, the ancient council leader standing at the front of the crowd. He bowed his head as Dae-hyun approached. "On behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I thank you," Mordak said. "You have saved many lives today." "We did what needed to be done," Dae-hyun replied simply. "More than that," Mordak said. "You have shown us something we did not know existed. Come." The full council is convened and waiting to hear your report. The council chamber was packed. Every delegate was present, along with observers and military officials. The air was thick with tension and curiosity. As the humans took their seats, the entire chamber fell silent. Rick stood to give his testimony. The massive Durnathi warrior looked different somehow, less confident, less certain. He had seen something that had shaken his understanding of the universe. "I have fought in many battles," Rix began, his voice carrying across the chamber. "I have seen warriors from every coalition species in combat. I thought I understood warfare. I was wrong." He activated a holographic display, showing footage from his helmet camera. The chamber watched as humans moved through the colony like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, striking without warning. "They hunted," Rick said, "not like soldiers hunt for enemies, like predators hunt for prey. They were patient beyond anything I've ever seen. I watched Commander Dae-hyun wait for 30 minutes without moving, barely breathing, just to get the perfect moment to strike." More footage played. Humans navigating through ventilation shafts that were impossibly tight. Humans running for hours without rest during the operation, while the larger coalition soldiers had to stop to catch their breath. Humans eating their rations without complaint, food that Rix had found barely edible. "They never stopped," Rix continued. "For 48 hours they fought without real sleep. They took brief rests, maybe 10 or 15 minutes at a time, then continued. My warriors needed 8 hours of sleep. The humans just kept going." Targaval spoke next. The Krillian delegate had requested permission to review all the battle footage. He had spent the entire trip back to the station analyzing it. "I need to correct something I said when the humans arrived," Targaval said. "I called them tiny. I called them weak. I questioned how such creatures could survive to reach the stars." He paused. I was looking at it backward. They didn't survive despite being small. They thrived because of it. He showed images from Earth, information that Nari had provided. Pictures of ancient humans hunting animals 10 times their size. Archaeological evidence of persistence hunting, where humans would chase prey for days across vast distances until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. "Most species on Earth are bigger than humans," Targaval explained. "Stronger, faster, more heavily armed with claws and teeth. But humans were smarter. They learned to use tools, to work together, to be patient. They became the dominant species not through power, but through intelligence and endurance." Nari was asked to present her findings on human biology. She stood before the council, no longer the dismissed scientist, but a respected expert. "Humans are persistence hunters," she explained. "Our bodies are designed for endurance. We can regulate our temperature through sweating. which allows us to run in heat that would kill most species. We can eat almost anything organic, which means we can survive in any environment. We heal quickly from injuries that would be permanent for other species. She showed comparative data. Humans had less muscle mass than most coalition species, but their muscle could work for far longer without fatigue. They had weaker bones, but bones that could heal from breaks. They had soft skin, but skin that could adapt to different climates and environments. "We're generalists," Nari said. "We're not the best at any one thing, but we're good at everything. That's how we survived on a planet that was actively trying to kill us." Velmora raised one of her crystalline hands. "But what we saw in the battle footage, that level of coordination, that precision, how is it possible?" Jinwoo stood to answer. "Humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We've had thousands of years to perfect the art of combat. Every human soldier goes through training that simulates the worst possible scenarios. We learn to work as a team instinctively. We learn to stay calm under pressure. We learn to turn off our fear when we need to." He played footage from the final battle in the dome. The council watched Dae-Hyun face Scraith, watched a human who barely reached the Voidborn's chest take down a warrior who should have been unstoppable. "That's not just training," Jinwoo said. "That's evolution. For millions of years, humans faced predators bigger and stronger than them. The ones who panicked died. The ones who ran died. The ones who survived were the ones who could stay calm, think clearly, and fight smart. That's in our genes now. That's what we are." The chamber was silent. Then Velmora spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "I need to share something," she said. She activated her own display, showing footage from the battle, but this footage focused on human faces. The council watched human expressions during combat. Before the battle, the humans had shown normal emotions, nervousness, determination, even fear. But the moment combat started, their faces changed. They became blank, empty. The fear vanished, replaced by cold calculation. The humans moved through the battle like machines, their faces showing no emotion at all. Only when it was over did normal expressions return. "This is what frightens me most," Velmora said quietly. "They can turn off their emotions. They can become something else when they need to. I've studied hundreds of species, and I've never seen anything like it." "It's called compartmentalization," Taemin explained. "We learn to separate our emotions from our actions in combat. It keeps us alive. Fear makes you slow. Anger makes you reckless. So we turn them off. Do what needs to be done, and turn them back on when it's safe." "That's terrifying," someone in the council said. "That's survival," Dae-Hyun replied. The council debated for hours. They discussed human capabilities, human psychology, human evolution. They reviewed every piece of evidence from the battle. And slowly, understanding began to replace fear. Finally, Mordak called for a vote on humanity's membership in the Galactic Coalition. The vote was unanimous, yes. But Mordak added something to the record. "Let it be noted that humanity's membership comes with a special designation. They are not to be considered a minor species or a protected species. They are to be recognized as what they truly are, an apex predator species." There were no objections. After the session, Dae-Hyun and Nari stood at a viewport, looking at Earth in the distance. The blue and green planet seemed peaceful from here, beautiful and welcoming. You couldn't see the dangers from space, the predators and diseases and disasters that had forged humanity into what it was. "They still don't fully understand," Nari said quietly. "They've seen us in a controlled situation against an enemy we could predict. They haven't seen what happens when we're really threatened, when we stop being polite." Dae-Hyun nodded. "They haven't seen total war. They haven't seen what happens when humanity stops holding back, when we fight not just to win but to survive. They haven't seen us when we're desperate." "Do you think they ever will?" I hope not, Dae-hyun said. I really hope not. Nari looked at him. But if they do? Dae-hyun's expression was serious. Then whatever threatens us had better hope it can run faster than we can chase. Because humans don't give up. Ever. It's not in our nature. They stood in silence, watching their home planet turn slowly in space. Behind them, the station bustled with activity. Word was spreading through the coalition about what had happened at Theta 9. About the tiny humans who had hunted void-born raiders like prey. In the council chamber, Rick sat alone, reviewing the battle footage one more time. He kept returning to one moment. Dae-hyun standing over Scraith's body, barely winded after a fight that should have killed him. The human had looked up at the camera. For just a second, Rix had seen something in those eyes. Not triumph, not anger, just cold acceptance. The eyes of a predator that had done what predators do. Rix shut off the display and sat in the dark. He had learned something important today. Size didn't matter. Strength didn't matter. What mattered was will, intelligence, and the relentless determination to survive no matter what. The humans had all three in abundance. They had been ridiculed for their size. They had been called weak, fragile, prey. But now everyone knew the truth. Humans weren't prey. They were what happened when prey evolved into something far more dangerous. They were the apex predator of a death world, and they had just introduced themselves to the galaxy. And the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The story of Theta 9 would spread. Other species would hear about the tiny humans who defeated an army. Some would be inspired. Some would be afraid. But all would remember one simple truth. Never underestimate the humans. Never judge them by their size. And never, ever make them angry. Because on a planet full of creatures trying to kill them, humans had learned to be the scariest thing in the room, and that lesson had just gone galactic.